Hi, my name is Pop. I'm making a video tutorial about Samuel Butler's 19th century dystopian novel Erewhon. He pronounced it in 3 syllables. The word itself is a jumble of letters. It's actually nowhere. And he did this tongue-in-cheek, and he was not the first person to do this. Over on the right is a depiction of New Zealand where this takes place. He is best known for having written The Way of All Flesh, a story about 4 generations of hypocrisy, but Erewhon is his only utopian novel. If you go online, you can see that they made a movie out of The Way of All Flesh in 1927 and a remake in 1940. You can also download the book The Way of All Flesh and also Erewhon from Gutenberg. You can get the Cliff Notes online as well. Just go through the short version of it. But I recommend that you get it through Gutenberg, and if you get it through Gutenberg, you can download either the EPUB or the Kindle Mobi version, and you can read it on your phone or a Kindle or a Nook. The novel is one of the Utopian novels, and Utopia is actually made up of the word utopos, no place, from the Greek, and ou is no, and topos is the word for which we get topic and topology. But it's a pun because the Greek prefix u is also good, so it's either a good place or a no place. Sir Thomas More on the left was the representative of the Pope in Rome on the island England, and on the right Henry VIII wanted to divorce one of his wives, and Sir Thomas More would not grant this, and he was beheaded. And this historical fact made him very famous as a martyr in the Roman Catholic Church. In so doing, I think it also helped to propel him as the person who developed this type of novel, which is given the name Utopia that he invented. The Utopian novels are named after this one book by Sir Thomas More, Utopia, but it was not the first. The first was perhaps The Republic by Plato. There was one I read called Looking Backward by Bellamy, and it was written in the 1890s, I think, and it took place in Manhattan, New York. And it was an interesting story about the desire for world communism to occur first in the United States. And in this story, a man got hit on the head, went unconscious, and woke up 100 years later in 1990, where the story was just a device to show him and the reader how good the world could be under communism. But then he got hit on the head again accidentally and woke up in 1890 and wrote the book. 1984 was actually written in 1948, and it was a stern warning about communism in Soviet Russia. H.G. Wells's Time Machine was an anti-utopian novel about blue-collar versus white-collar in the far distant future. The blue-collar productive people lived underground and fed upon the non-productive white-collar people. Brave New World was nothing more than a horror show of medical totalitarianism. And then Utopia. A really pleasant, cute one was Lost Horizons, about a society in the Himalayas where people were so pure they lived for a long time. The utopian novels are matched by the anti- or dystopian novels. I gotta say that naive people are very easily deceived into believing the goodness of utopian schemes. And there's a Buddhist aphorism, "A fool's paradise is the perfect design for hell." And I'm going to say, do not be afraid of dystopian visions, instead be warned by them, but do be afraid of any utopian vision. I'm going to go through what is kind of like the general utopian novel's plot. Homeboy is sailing along 19th century England, perhaps on vacation, and there is a storm, and everyone on the crew is dead except for him. And there's an island, and he washes up on it unconscious. And while he is on the beach, he is discovered, and he marries the chief's daughter, and he stays there for many, many years, learning their language and their culture and their religion and so forth. And after this good lady passes away, he makes his way back to England, and he writes his memoirs and shows you and me what it is like to live in paradise. Every one of these things, every one of these utopian novels is either a criticism or a warning or a satire or a really good suggestion or a reprimand, or it's just plain wishful thinking. There are a lot of post-apocalyptic stories that are popular today that have been written in just the last few years. The zombie story is just another one of those kinds of settings. Well, what is the warning in Erewhon? It was written anonymously, published in 1872. And this was after a very significant year, 1859. Because in 1859, Charles Darwin published his book, The Origin of Species. There he is on the right as an old man. And he didn't want to publish. He was afraid to publish, and he knew there was going to be a lot of problems. But a contemporary of his, much younger, sent him a letter, and he came up with the idea on his own. And graciously, Darwin wrote him back and said, "Man, I've been working on this for 20 years. I've been on the HMS Beagle, and I've been going from place to place collecting these fossils, and this idea hit me." When he wrote the book, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, he published it, and immediately there was a big social problem. He wanted to explain a mystery. They knew about, because of geology and canal digging in England, that there were different kinds of terrain: Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Mississippian, Pennsylvanian, Permian, and they knew that there had been 5 great catastrophes in the past, and at the site of each catastrophe there was an end of a species. The animals which were existent in the past would die out when they hit a certain catastrophe line, and some of them would extend through it, and some of them would stop at a certain place. Others lived to the very, very present. But he was not sure what caused the origin of species, because you see, there was a logical conundrum. If there were animals dying out, that meant that today there would be fewer and fewer and fewer species alive, fewer than any time in the past. But this is clearly not the case, because he could see from the fossil record that some animals would begin shortly after each interruption. So he wanted to know what was the origin of this species, and he came up with this idea. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about Charles Darwin in this regard. His wife was Emma, and she was also his first cousin, and these were among the wealthiest people in England. And Emma's dad was Josiah Wedgwood. Now, there's a federal law in the United States of America that when you get married, you have to register at the department store, and they get you Wedgwood china. and your relatives will buy you a plate, a pot, a cup, a bowl, and you never use it, of course. You end up using Corningware Corel, but it stays in a drawer. And but at one time, everybody used to use Wedgwood china, and these were fabulously wealthy people. Perhaps maybe 200 or 300 families ran all of England. They owned all of England. And so Charles had lots of opportunity to pursue his science full time, and he did. He was not a lazy guy. He worked and worked and worked. There was a problem, and the problem is that in the front of Bibles in England, the King James Bible, there was a thing written by Bishop Ussher, and he said that the earth had been created in 4004 BC, specifically on October 23rd, and more specifically, he knew exactly when, at 9 o'clock in the morning. When one is completely precise like that, one gets to wear this cool collar. During this time, the church did in fact believe in evolution, but they believed in a different kind of evolution, and they only allowed a certain amount of it. And this was because they believed in what we now today call Lamarckian evolution. The Chevalier Jean-Baptiste Pierre de Lamarck tried to explain the differences in animals by looking at such things as the giraffe with a long neck. He would say, well, this giraffe, you see, stretched his neck to try to reach the higher branches, and when he did so, he would then get married and have a baby giraffe, and that baby giraffe was born with a slightly longer neck, and then with each succeeding generation, the giraffe's neck got longer and longer. He was saying, in effect, that traits which were physical, which were acquired during the lifetime of an individual, could be passed along through the germplasm. Today we know that is not true. The most common example of Lamarckian evolution was apparently to look at the village blacksmith. Look at his big arm muscles. He's been whacking away at the forge, and everyone sees how strong he is. And then the guy got married, and his kid, lo and behold, is born with these very big arm muscles. And we just know it's not true. The science writer Isaac Asimov, who has passed away now, he pointed out that 4,000 years of circumcision have not yet created a pre-circumcised kid. Now, the church believed in Lamarckian evolution, and this dovetailed with the perfectibility of man. They thought that if you could pray about it and do good works, then when you got married and had children, your children would be closer to the angels. And this was tied up in the social thought content of the day, and of course they looked down upon the Cockneys, and the Cockneys did not appear to be working on this plan, and for that reason they thought that the upper classes were making progress and the lower classes were not. Now, this was prior to Darwinian thought. Then when Darwinian evolution came to the forefront, well, I mean, gee whiz, let's just incorporate that into the whole. And then they used this new concept of social Darwinism, and they thought that they could improve things by breeding. They would say such things as, well, racing improves the breed. That makes no sense at all to us today. Racing does not improve the breed. We know racing does not improve the breed. Breeding improves the breed. But that doesn't stop people from trying. Now, this ties in with communism versus capitalism. This is a strange thing to compare this to. But I'm going to lead you into this and ask you to consider this. We've got the biology competition. We've got the economic competition. Under capitalism, we've got competition, and we say it's good. We say that businesses should be born, be created, thrive, grow, get old, get sick, split into two, perhaps bequeath a legacy to a smaller subsidiary business, eventually die. Under communism, though, they say, no, that's not necessary. We can control the economy. There's no such thing as competition. In that sense, the communists were very much like the Christian church. And it's strange to me that here in the West, where we do believe in capitalism and we do believe in competition, that our church does not believe in evolution. Now you can see what was going on in Russia. Some little kid would sit down and he would be looking at a book about dinosaurs and he would say, "Daddy, if competition is good for biology, how come it doesn't work good for..." Shh! Be quiet, kid. Do you want to go to Moscow University or not? You want me in the gulag? Yet, over here, in the West, we will look at capitalism and say, wow, that's good. We like competition. But then when we go to the biology class in high school, oh, no. No. We've got all these animals fixed in stone. Well, that's because the differences are picked up like a chess game. In the West here, we've got theism. We believe in a God. In communism, under Soviet Russia, they did not believe in God. They said, no, that is a false doctrine. We are going to take care of all of those things. You don't need a God. There is no God. The government is your God. And over here in the West, we say, well, there is a God, and we rely on God. So, it's funny how these different camps have selected things, but they seem to be at odds one with the other. Now, if you've got creationism, you need a God. If you've got evolutionism, well, you really do not need a God. I mean, people can argue about the gradations of this left and right, and then it gets further confusing because most people, 99.999% of the people, believe in Darwinian evolution and not Lamarckian evolution, but, it's evolution. And if you've got evolution, you can say, well, I don't think we need a God. You could, but maybe not. Does evolution happen, and is competition good? Isn't it amazing that all of us on planet Earth can agree about simple stuff like physics? I will drop something from my hand and it's going to fall to the ground. We believe in gravity. Everybody will agree on this issue. But equally intelligent people will look at each other, frown, and say, I believe in communism. And the other guy will say, I don't. I believe in capitalism. And then they'll look at each other and one will say, I believe that there is a God. And another guy will say, I don't. It's very strange to me that these things can be argued about. Now, let's just take this chess game from the east to the west and pretend that the red ones over there are the Reds, the communists. And look how this chess game works. I mean, it goes back and forth between various things, economics and evolution and social things. And so Ivan gets the first move. You are doing a very good job with your minorities in the West. I see that you are allowing the ex-slave Negroes a very good, fortunate living. Well, hey, listen, that's just racism. That's got nothing to do with capitalism. Oh, so then it's your religion that you treat them that so badly. No, it's not religion, and it's not capitalism. It's neither one of those things. Oh, well, in that case, I I must say that it's very fortunate that we are taking care of everyone, and you are also taking care of everyone in your own way. Well, listen, if you think that's the case, how come you got all these gulags and stuff? How come you killed like 30 million kulaks or whatever it was in the Ukraine? No wonder they all went over to the Nazis when the Nazis invaded. Well, we were just experimenting with Soviet agricultural technology. We had our guy, the agrarian expert N.I. Lysenko, who believed in Lamarckian evolution, and the kulaks were too stupid to adapt. So you're saying that the breadbasket of the world, the best grain growing area on planet Earth, could not grow grain because you morons were oppressing the kulaks. Good job, Ivan. Really great. Well, I don't know. I think you're cheating. Okay, you go ahead and move then. But we're going to argue back and forth and back and all like that there, and we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to end up with a stalemate. I mean, unless one of us wins. Which one of us is going to win? I mean, you guys just collapsed. The Soviet Union just totally cratered. And here we are over here. I mean, how come we're not having this big party? How come capitalism has not just said, "Whoa, we're just doing so good"? That's because none of us in the East have given up on this. We just think we need to do it again. And, you know, we're not going to do it again. We're going to let you morons in the West do it again for us. It's international chess. It's the pot calling the kettle black. And it's called painting yourself into a corner. If the communists pick up religion, they can't. We've already picked up religion. If we pick up atheism, we can't. We've already selected religion. It's almost as if we are exchanging ideas and painting ourselves into a corner. The belief systems like to combine in order to simplify, but guess what? The combined belief systems lead to contradictions and conflict. Look here what we got. We got over here the capitalism and competition and theism. And over here you've got communism, but there's no competition, and there's atheism. Well, we don't believe in evolution. So, guess what? They didn't really believe in evolution either. They picked up Lamarckian evolution rather than Darwinian evolution, and that screwed up their wheat production and so forth. That's probably an oversimplification, but that's usually how people explain these things. Did evolution happen? Is evolution true? Well, let's look at it. While everyone was looking at it and arguing about it, Butler, he said, well, let's just suppose it's true. If it is true, what might be some of the implications for the far distant future? And he came up with two. And they don't seem to be related. He said we would end up being slaves to the machinery. And he also came up with the responsibility for your own health. Personal responsibility. And this is kind of like the two central points of Erewhon, I think. And they seem very unrelated, but they are related. Look at our great fear of the takeover of the machines. You got the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's a cold killer robot. His only goal is to kill people. And look at here. Kids are attracted to taming a tiger and a lion. And look at that. That's very interesting. And then you've got two variations that are the evolution of this. You've got what? A killer authority figure. Who are you going to trust if not a policeman? Now, this is terrible. A beautiful woman. Whoa. And even the Bible has warned us about beautiful women. Now this woman has, whoa, I mean, she's well endowed, but she got a steel coochie. Whoa, it's terrible. These two figures have evolved. It evolved in the course of just the depiction in the sequels of the movies. Look at the Cylons, how they have evolved in Battlestar Galactica. Well, first you got just this nasty looking killer robot, and then, they get progressively more human. This is not exactly what Butler was talking about. He was talking about not great big robots and killer robots and things like that. He was talking about mechanism. He noticed the phrase, the committee took on a life of its own, and it certainly does. And he did not know about memes and genes. I'll talk about that later. But he did know about mission creep. What's mission creep? Well, you start out with a small goal, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it doesn't end. The worst mission creep I've ever seen in my life is we're looking at Saddam Hussein with this nasty little Hitler mustache, and he's got on a Homburg hat, and he's firing an AK-47 in the air wearing a suit. What a moron. And then he's killing his own people, the minority called the Kurds, who speak a different language and such. He gasses them. So he's got, weapons of mass destruction. So we go over there and kick him out of Kuwait, which he invaded, and it takes, a couple of weeks or something. And then 10 years later we go back. What? We're still there? A decade later? Trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. We have spent so many dollars on this that the economy of the United States of America has tanked. Memes versus genes. Charlie Darwin did not know about genes. He did not know Gregor Mendel. He did not know about DNA. He did not know mitochondria, endoplasmic reticuli, lysosomes, ribosomes. He just knew there was some sort of mechanism. Well, in 1953 they found the mechanism. It's DNA. That's how all the information is laid out with this sequence of the 4 bases. And in 1976, the science writer in biology, Richard Dawkins, came up with the idea, hey, you don't even need to write this stuff out. You can have mechanism and repetition through culture, language, writing, and you can create a sort of a living thing that doesn't even have a body. Memes. Well, the Erewhonians, you see, they had been very, very advanced. They were more advanced than we are today in 2013. And this was written in, 1870s. But what they did is they set themselves to looking at their society, and they said, oh, we're on the wrong path. We've got to go on a diet. Just like a fat guy says, I'm going to back off from the table before I'm full. And they said, no steam engine, no motor, no pulley, no clock. I think they allowed a shovel, a wheelbarrow, and a lever. They also had this other thing which was kind of funny. They had personal responsibility regarding health, and they equated it with sin. During the Middle Ages, when you got sick, there was no question about that. The church would tell you, dude, you're sick, you've sinned. They didn't know about bacteria and stuff. And then when Louis Pasteur found out about bacteria, and he didn't even know about viruses even, people all abdicated responsibility for their own personal health. Some guy would go out at night and it'd be raining and be in his shirt sleeves and he's drinking all night and he's playing cards and he's smoking cigarettes and he's eating junk food and he gets sick and he says, hey, it's not my fault, it's bacteria. In totalitarianism, the state takes over for you all of your responsibilities. The individual doesn't count, the family doesn't count. Not only doesn't count, but they suppress it. They take over the care of your physical health, your mental health. There is no personal responsibility. And the worst thing that they've got going today is the Twinkie defense. You will hear defense attorneys now saying such stuff as, well, you know, he's not responsible. He's addicted to gambling. That's why he killed the guy. He's addicted to alcohol, to drugs. He's got a sex addiction. And the worst one, of course, is the Twinkie defense. The guy will say, well, you know, he ate some Twinkies and his blood sugar spiked and he went berserk. And people are today in courts of law getting off scot-free or with greatly reduced sentences because there is no personal responsibility anymore. Now, years ago, decades and decades ago, you were responsible. Today, you are not. Here I'm going to plot it on a chart. Up on top, you've got your biological health, and then below, your behavior. Well, during medieval times, you were responsible for both at 100% level. Now, it's kind of ironic because, you know, the church could have been thought of as a totalitarian device that circumscribed your behavior, and so was the king. I mean, you lived under the king and the church, and supposedly they owned you, but still, for some reason, during medieval times, you were responsible for your behavior and your biological health. Now, since Louis Pasteur, we have abdicated responsibility for biological health, and we are saying increasingly, well, you know what, there's viruses, there's bacteria, and I'm no longer responsible for my biological health. And this has moved over to the left more and more and more. And now even the state says, well, we're going to take care of your biological health problems by having a cradle-to-grave state for health care. At the same time, since this is getting dragged over to the left, so is your behavior responsibility getting dragged over to the left. You are no longer responsible for your behavior. And, you know, eventually it goes all the way over here where the state owns you, body and soul. You're not responsible. You don't have any freedoms. The family unit is no longer considered viable. The individual unit is no longer considered viable. And you've got a total state of totalitarianism, zero freedom. In Erewhon, if you had the flu, whoa, you didn't dare tell anybody. You were so responsible. You were fearful that they would think you were degenerate. And so a guy with the flu in Erewhon would stay home, and his wife would cover for him, and she would say, oh, my husband cannot go to work today because, you know, he is so angry at his coworkers and boss. I am afraid he might kill somebody. He's going to punch holes in the sheetrock of our bedroom. So I'm keeping him at home for a few days. Today, when a guy is sick, when a guy feigns sickness and doesn't want to go to the party, what he does is he says, well, I got a stomach ache, and he might really actually develop a stomach ache and not go to the party. We say he's got hypochondria. He is under hypochondriasis, and in Erewhon, you've got just something different. You are a spiritual valetudinarian. A valetudinarian is a hypochondriac. And it's just different. In our culture years ago, it was not okay to be mentally ill. that was considered degenerate. Because you see, years ago, we knew about bacteria, and we would say, well, it's okay to be sick with bacteria. But see, that's a behavioral problem. Therefore, we equate it with sin. In the Erewhonians, they were just backwards in their thinking from us. And I don't know why Butler did this. I think he did it tongue-in-cheek. It doesn't seem to be related, but there is a relationship somehow. You got to really reach for it. This is why Erewhon is considered a good book, but it's not the greatest of great books. It seems to be a little bit disjointed. If you abdicate your responsibilities to yourself or anything else, the state will very gladly take up those responsibilities for you.